Okay, let's unpack this. We're about to dive into source material that is so potent, so historically accurate, that its author literally spent years just convincing people he wasn't making it all up.
We're talking about Fyodor Dostoevsky's Demons.
Or, as it's often known, The Possessed. And this is a novel that critics, when it came out, they just dismissed it, called it hysterical, a political satire.
Only for it to become, a chillingly precise study of modern totalitarian terror. To really understand the fever pitch Dostoevsky was in writing this,
You have to go back to the source.
you have to start where he did, with a true crime scene. The date is November 21st, 1869. We're in Moscow.
And this isn't the novel yet. This is real life.
This is real life. The victim's name is Ivanov. He's a student at the Petrov Agricultural Academy. And his body is found at a frozen pond weighted down with bricks.
And the sources really emphasized the brutality here. It wasn't just a murder. It was almost ritualistic. A smashed skull, a bullet wound.
Yeah.
This was designed to send a message.
Precisely. It was a political execution. And it was orchestrated by a radical revolutionary leader named Sergey Nechayev against one of his own comrades.
Why?
Because Ivanov had dared to question his authority. And maybe more importantly, he threatened to leave their secret society. For Dostoevsky, this crime was a lightning bolt.
And that's the essential context for you, our listener.
Yeah.
Because Dostoevsky didn't just read about this case in the papers. He saw his own past staring back at him.
You have to remember, decades earlier, Dostoevsky was a young radical himself. He was part of the socialist Petrushevsky circle.
And he paid the price for it. The mock execution in 1849, Siberia.
He knew what it meant to be possessed by these, utopian, world-changing ideas. But when he read about Nechayev, he saw that the next generation had just jettisoned all the old moral rules.
They had taken the abstract idea of revolution.
Then turned it into cold, practical murder.
That recognition, that mix of horror and personal history, is what turns Demons from just a political thriller into a full-blown prophecy. So our goal today is to connect those dots for you, to show how this novel is a blueprint for what he called ideological possession, all rooted in that single real-life tragedy.
And to do that, you have to understand the architect of this terror, Sergey Nechayev. He was a radical agitator, incredibly young, only 22, and he was just possessed by this fierce class resentment, son of a waiter.
And he founds this secret society, People's Retribution, Narodnaya Rasprava.
Right, and the core document, the thing that outlines their whole ideology it's just terrifying. He co-authored it with the anarchist Mikhail Bakunin. It's called the Catechism of a Revolutionary.
This is really the ideological DNA of the demons Dostoevsky was writing about. It's just pure radical utilitarianism.
It is absolute. The Catechism famously states, the revolutionary is a doomed man.
A doomed man. What does that mean in practice?
It means he has to have no emotions, no personal life, no name, no past, no attachments, not even honor. His one and only purpose is the total destruction of the existing order. Every personal connection, every human feeling has to be sacrificed for the revolution.
It sounds like a kind of chilling secular monasticism, where the devotion is just to destruction, not to God or creation. But what makes this so different? I mean, lots of revolutions use people as a means to an end.
What makes Nechayevism so unique, so diabolical, is the calculated use of shared crime as a control mechanism. The murder of Ivanov served two purposes. One, yes, it eliminated dissent. Ivanov was going to talk.
Right.
But more importantly, Nechayev made sure that 4 other members took part in the beating, the strangling, the shooting of their comrade.
The blood bond.
Exactly. He bound them together through shared guilt. He guaranteed their total submission. They can never leave, never concess, because their fate is tied to his. It's horrifyingly brilliant.
So Dostoevsky gets this. He doesn't just read the headlines.
Oh, no. He obsessively studied the 1871 trial transcripts. He took notes on all 67 people who were brought to justice. He wasn't interested in a whodunit. He was performing an autopsy on the Russian soul. He wanted to know how these idealistic young people become murderers.
So if the murder is the starting point, the novel Demons is Dostoevsky's attempt to trace that evil back to its source. And to understand the sons, he aims his satirical eyes squarely at the fathers.
Exactly. Which brings us to Stepan Trofimovich Verkhovensky, Pyotr's father in the novel. He is this scathing caricature of the harmless 1840s liberal intellectual.
Well, the kind of guy who talks a big game about Western ideals, German philosophy, social justice, but he does it all while living comfortably off a wealthy patroness.
Stepan is all abstraction. He loves the idea of freedom, but he's completely disconnected from reality. And what Dostoevsky's arguing is that Stepan's generation, they created this profound moral vacuum. By throwing out tradition, religion, all the old values, they left nothing solid behind.
And that void gets filled by the son.
By the son, Pyotr Verkhovensky, the fictional Nechayev. Pyotr is the logical, ugly consequence of those ideals. He doesn't bother with the poetry of revolution. He jumps straight to the mechanics of power.
He isn't really possessed by an ideology at all, is he? He's possessed by the will to power itself. He even admits it at one point. He says, I'm a crook, not a socialist.
Exactly. He's the ultimate manipulator. He uses chaos, confusion, psychological games to destabilize everything. But to do that, he needs a figurehead.
He needs an idol.
He needs Nikolai Stavrogin. Stavrogin is the true, terrifying heart of the novel, the central emptiness. He's handsome, charismatic, aristocratic. Everyone is drawn to him. Pyotr sees him as the perfect golden idol to attract followers, the sun that all the other little revolutionary satellites orbit around.
But the sun is hollow. It's a black hole. Stavrogin is moral nihilism personified. He has this immense capacity for good, but he's lost the ability to tell the difference between good and evil. So he commits these monstrous acts just out of boredom. Or philosophical curiosity.
And that indifference is arguably more terrifying than active evil. Dostoevsky partly based him on a man from his own past, Nikolai Speshnev, the Mephistopheles of his radical circle.
The man who introduced him to pure atheism.
Yes. Stavrogin carries that spiritual weight of the void. His name even comes from Stavros, the Greek word for cross, which is just this profound irony for a man who is basically an inverted Christ figure.
And to really understand that void, we have to talk about the part of the novel that was literally too shocking for the 19th century.
The censored chapter, at Tikhon's, or Stavrogin's confession. This is a section where Stavrogin visits a monk, Tikhon, and it was suppressed by the original editor, Mikhail Katkov.
And Katkov was a conservative, a nationalist. He should have been on Dostoevsky's side.
He was, but even he found the content just too obscene for publication.
Because in it, Stavrogin confesses to the violation of a young girl, Matryoshka, and then her subsequent suicide.
Yeah.
And the real terror isn't just the act, it's his reaction.
His indifference. The fact that he just watched, he did it to see how far his moral freedom could go.
In the monk, Tikhon, he sees right through him. He sees Stavrogin's pride. Stavrogin wants to publish this confession, not to repent, but as a final act of pride. A challenge.
Tikhon tells him, you already hate beforehand all those who will read this. It's a confession without humility, a final flaunting of his own monstrousness.
And the history of that manuscript is a story in itself. That chapter, the key to the entire novel's psychology, was lost for decades.
It was only discovered in 1921, hidden in a white tin case in the Soviet archives in Moscow.
Just imagine trying to understand the novel for 50 years without its psychological core. It's like reading Hamlet without the ghost. The first English translation was done by Virginia Woolf in 1922.
The timing is just chilling. The key to diagnosing ideological terror was found just as real ideological terror was taking over Russia.
And that central nihilism, Stavrogin, it radiates outwards. It infects everyone. This is where Dostoevsky gets into what he calls the demons, all the Westernisms like atheism and utilitarianism. And we see two philosophical extremes in the characters Ivan Shatov and Alexei Kirilov.
The Shatov is based directly on Ivanov, the real murder victim. He represents the struggling Slavophile, the guy trying desperately to get back to Russian roots, to faith. He has this idea of the Russian people as God-bearing.
But his murder is the climax. It's the fictional recreation of the Nechayev crime. Pyotr kills him to forge that blood bond, to lock his followers in. It's the ultimate collision of abstract ideas and real blood.
And on the complete opposite pole, you have Alexei Kirilov. Kirilov pushes philosophical atheism to its absolute, logical, and absurd end.
Let's define that, because logical suicide or becoming a man-god sounds, well, it sounds insane.
It is, but it's brutally logical. Kirilov believes that if God does not exist, then man is now the ultimate authority. But man is still crippled by the fear of death, which he thinks God invented to keep us enslaved.
So to prove he is completely free.
To become the man-god, he has to kill himself. To eliminate the fear of death and prove once and for all that he is his own master.
So he commits suicide not out of despair, but as a philosophical proof. The ultimate act of defiant freedom, which is also total self-destruction.
And these characters, they embody the novel's core diagnosis. The political terror is just the symptom. The real disease is spiritual. Terrorism is what happens when ordinary people accept evil ideas.
Which brings us to the prophetic legacy of demons. When it was first published in the 1870s, critics scoffed. They thought Dostoevsky was being hysterical, exaggerating the danger.
They were spectacularly wrong. 9 years after publication, Tsar Alexander II was assassinated by revolutionaries. And then, of course, the dynamics he described became the foundation of 20th century totalitarianism.
It's chilling that Lenin himself praised Nechayev as a titan of revolution, and on the flip side, apparently he hated Dostoevsky's novel.
Because it exposed the revolutionary soul too clearly. Dostoevsky basically mapped the mechanics of the Soviet state 50 years before it existed. The purges, the show trials, sacrificing the individual for the cause, it's all there.
And the specific term for it in the novel is Shigolyovism, right?
Right. Shigolyav is the group's theorist, and he comes to this incredible conclusion. He says, starting from the idea of unlimited freedom, his system must logically end in unlimited despotism.
The ultimate paradox.
He theorizes that to create a perfect, equal society, 90% of the population have to become slaves to the other 10%.
Freedom requires slavery. It's why thinkers like Hannah Arendt connected the novel to the banality of evil. It's not about passion. It's about cold, monstrous logic.
Dostoevsky saw where the fire, which he said was in the minds of men, was going to lead.
So after all of this massive diagnosis of a spiritual sickness, how does Dostoevsky end it? Not with total despair, right?
No, he closes with an allegory, a moment of clarity even for that older generation. He uses the parable from the Gospel of Luke about the Gadarene swine.
The story where the demons leave a possessed man and enter a herd of pigs, which then run off a cliff and drown.
Exactly. At the end of the novel, the liberal father, Stepan Verkhovensky, finally understands that passage on his deathbed. He realizes the demons, the nihilism, the Western ideas, they aren't some external enemy. They were ideas that were hosted and nourished inside Russia itself.
Inside the intelligentsia.
Inside his own generation. He cries out, and they're us and them, and Pyotr, and perhaps I at the head of them all.
His generation hosted the virus.
They did. But the gospel story holds out hope. The sick man is healed. He's sitting clothed and in his right mind. Dostoevsky believed Russia could be healed too, but only if it first expelled those demons. Demons is his terrifying warning against any ideology that puts the cause above the sacredness of the individual.
And that ultimately is the question this deep dive leaves you with. Dostoevsky showed what happens when men try to become gods. And that conflict between faith and the void, it haunted him to the end, and it drove him to his final greatest work. So we leave you with the question that fuels the brothers Karamazov. If God does not exist, is everything permitted?